Welcome to Off the Rails Tech, and this is the first video in a series on Django, which is a Python web framework. If you have no experience at all programming in Python or in perhaps a different language, then this video is probably not going to be the best for you. I would go ahead and go look up some Python tutorials. You should have a fairly decent grasp on Python and how classes work and functions and for loops and strings and all that. So anyway, let's dive right in. So we're going to be making a small Django app. I feel like the blog is overdone. I think that horse has been beat enough. So we're going to do something a little different. I'm going to build a little app that is going to allow me to just kind of track different restaurants that I've gone to and what I think of them, and if I enjoyed them, if I thought the price was good, just kind of like a restaurant review app. So something that if you follow along, hopefully you could use for yourself and might be fun. But yeah, that's what we're going to build. So to get started, we're obviously going to need Python. I already have Python installed in this folder here. I have the latest and greatest, which is Python 3.6.5, which I just installed. I believe that's the latest and greatest. I installed it a couple weeks ago. So yep, 3.6.5 is the latest and greatest. As you can tell, when I did install it, I didn't have it be my default Python, so I still have an older version as my default, which doesn't matter so much because we're going to set up a virtual environment, which is a really good habit to get into if you're not already doing that. Basically, virtual environments are just isolated Python versions that you can go ahead and install all sorts of packages to, and you don't have to worry about it conflicting with like your main clean system Python. It's probably more important if you're on Linux than if you're on Windows. I'm using Windows here, but if you're using Linux, you don't really want to mess with the system Python, as the operating system tends to use the underlying Python, and you start upgrading it and adding packages, you might run into some problems. Anyway, we're going to set up a virtual environment for our project. So I just have two folders in here, one called virtual environments and one called video tutorials, where we're going to put our Django project. So I'm just going to cd into virtual environments. You will notice that I did not include a space. I have underscores here and here. Django, when you do a start project, and I'm not sure if the virtual environments might not like spaces, but I know Django, if you were to start a project and had a space in anywhere in your folder path, it would not like it. So I just avoided it. So I'm just gonna drag this over here to make a new virtual environment, and we're just gonna call the virtual environment restaurants, because what we're making is an app for reviewing restaurants. Alright, while this does that, there's another package that we're going to be using besides Django, obviously, and that's called local flavor. And what that's going to allow us to do is it's going to allow us to create a field where we can select states, and it's going to populate that for us. So there should be like a drop down with all the states in it, and I'll show you that once we get there. So our virtual environment is done. So to activate it, we just cd into the directory we made, the virtual environment, and you'll see there's a whole bunch of other things in here. But what we want to do is run inside scripts. There's something called activate.bat. Well, or just activate. And you'll notice that our command prompt has now changed. Over here we have restaurants in parentheses. That lets us know we are in the virtual environment. If you were on Linux, you would, I can't remember off the top of my head, but I believe it's in the bin folder. So you would type in source, and then it would be bin activate. and that would bring you into the virtual environment. To deactivate out of it is the same in both Windows and Linux. You just type deactivate. I'll show you that in a second. I'm just going to type Python V here just to prove this is now 365. And when I did it earlier, up here, way up here, you can see that it was 351, and that we were not in the virtual environment. I'm going to actually get rid of this screen, so I'll show you how to deactivate. There you go, and now we're no longer in the virtual environment, and if we typed in Python V, we're back to the main Python. I'm pretty much done with this screen because I'm actually going to be using PyCharm, which is a Python IDE. I strongly prefer it. You can use any IDE you want. There's Aptana. You don't have to use an IDE at all. You can use Notepad. You can do whatever. I enjoy using IDE. I think it makes it easier. So actually, we're not going to get into PyCharm quite yet. I want to start the project from here, and then I'm going to open it once we have it started. So I'm going to actually quickly get back into our virtual environment, and I'm going to back out here, back out one more, and then we're going to go into the video tutorials, and this is just empty, and we're going to do Django. Oh, you know what, we can't do Django Admin. We have to install Django first. So all I'm going to do pip install Django. And since we're in our virtual environment, this is going to install it only in this instance over here of Python that we have. So we can do Django Admin. Start project. And we're just going with all this restaurants. So we now have a folder in here called restaurants. If you want a little more visual, here's the video tutorial, restaurants. It made a manage.py and another folder called restaurants with some settings and URLs and stuff that we will get to shortly. Some of it anyway. So now that we have the project created, I'm going to get rid of this. And we're going to just use PyCharm. And one of the things I love about PyCharm is that it has a terminal in it. So let's go ahead and open up our project. So here's our project. We're just going to click OK. You see we have that restaurants folder here and that manage.py here. And as you can see down here, we also have a terminal. So I'm just going to use this terminal because it comes in really handy just to have it here in the same window that I'm coding in. And we are going to have to activate our virtual environment. So I'm going to do off the rails tech. We're going to do video virtual environments, scripts, no, restaurants, scripts, and then activate. And there you can see that we're in our virtual environment. And now let's do Python manage.py, and we're going to start our first application. Python projects are made up of what they call apps. So we're going to start our first app, and we're going to just call this reviews, or just review. So we're going to be reviewing restaurants. And if I refresh over here, oh, there, didn't have to, it just popped up. You can see it created another folder, and it has some Python files in it and a migrations folder, which we will get to in a minute. So yeah, this is the initial steps to set up. Now, if you're not familiar, Django uses, I guess there's some debate on this, it uses what I guess other programming web frameworks like Rails and .NET call MVC, which is Models View Controller. Python uses models, views, templates, and basically what other frameworks would call a controller. Django calls the view, and what Django calls the template, other frameworks would call the view. Yeah. Anyway, the way models, views, and templates work is that models is where you're going to define basically the database tables. This is the back end where your data is going to be stored. You're defining the table, the rows that are in the table, how, you know, two tables may be related. That's what models are for. They're basically defining the database tables, and that goes in this file here called models. And then you have your views, and your views are where you basically are collecting information out of the database, or you're using this to put information into the database. You're basically collecting all the data that you want to display on your web page. And then your templates is where you actually are formatting that data. So the models are defining the database, the views are collecting data and then passing it to a template, and the template is actually rendering the data on an HTML page. So in this tutorial, I'm going to cover the models, and we're going to get into this admin pie a little bit because Django has an admin built into it. And that's going to be it for this first video, and then in later videos we'll get into views and some other stuff. So the first thing we're going to want to do is create a model, create a class, which is going to be called restaurant, and that's going to extend models.model, which is a class that is just part of the Django web framework. And what are we going to want to track? We're going to want to track the name of the restaurant, obviously. We're going to maybe want to track the address, might be a good thing. So we can get back to it. So the town that it's in, the state that it's in, and how about the phone number? That way there you can call and make reservations or order takeout, whatever. We're going to add one more field. This is called the slug field. And I'll try to explain it briefly here, but it's probably become way more evident of how it's used later on when we get into the views. But it's basically, I use it a lot for in my URLs. So it's usually it's something that has to be URL friendly. The slug field, like you can't have spaces in it. It won't let you. It has to be unique usually. So it's kind of like a primary key. Django does have a primary key that it just has an ID field that it's going to create automatically in the background, and it's just going to be auto incremented starting with 1 that we're not even going to see unless you really dig behind it. But this is also, like, in addition to having that, it gives you, basically it'll give us a chance to have pretty sensical name driven URLs, and we'll get to that, like I said, in the view. So our name field, we just want that to be a char field. So we're going to call that models char field. And for char fields, you have to specify a max length. It will complain if you do not. So I'm just going to throw in 100 as a nice round number. I don't think that any of the restaurants that I put in are going to have that many characters, but we should never have a problem. Address, same thing. In fact, I don't know why I'm typing this out again. That's going to be a char field. The town Same thing. Now the state. I don't want to have to type in the state, so I want a drop-down field. And lucky for us, someone has already created something called local flavor, which is going to allow us, I mean, you could do this without using local flavor. You could build your own list, but I don't want to have to build my own list because I'm lazy, and yeah. So we're going to use this. And it would help if I typed install. So one thing we're going to have to do is we're going to have to tell Django, even though we just did a pip install, our Django application doesn't know about this. And the way we need to tell it about it is by going to the settings and then going to installed apps. And then we're going to have to tell it that this is something we want. And we're just going to have to type in local flavor. And while we're here, we also have to tell Django about our app that we just created, because we created a review app and it has no clue about this review app. And we want it to know about this review app, so we're going to add that as well. Alright, let's get back to our models since these are highly undone. Now, to use this local flavor thing, we're going to have to import some things. So I'm going to say from local flavor.us.us states import state choices. And then from local flavor, you see I made a typo above, I'll fix that in a second. US models import US state field. Local flavor. And then this is just going to be US state field choices equal state choices. And this should give us all the states in a nice drop down. And the slug field has its own thing, so it's models slug field. And we want this to be unique, so we're going to force it to be unique so that we don't ever get duplicates. And so that's pretty much it. There is one more thing which I'm going to show you. It's very common, and you'll see it. It's highly recommended, considered best practice, is to add this method to all your models. Basically what this is this is what's going to show up in the admin by default, and it's also what's going to show up if you just had a object in a template and you didn't weren't calling a specific field. This is what would show up by default. So we're just going to return the slug. You could return the name, you could return any one of the fields, you could combine some fields and make it into one long thing. I prefer just to use the slug. I find that to be the most useful, so that's what I'm going to do. And I'll show you exactly how this plays out in the admin, because we're going to make one more table here, or one more class. We're going to create one more class, which a class in the models is basically a table in the database, which again, I'll talk about the database soon. So not only are we going to track the restaurant we went to, the name and the address, we want to know what dish we had, and then we're going to want to maybe know like the price of the dish, and then we'll leave a field for some comments of what we thought of the dish. So the dish is going to be, this is going to have a relationship back to the restaurant model. So we're going to, first field is going to be restaurant, and this is going to be a foreign key field. Now if you're familiar with databases, and I hope you are, a foreign key field is a one-to-many relationship. So basically, in most SQL databases, you have one-to-one relationships, one-to-many relationships, and many-to-many relationships, with probably one-to-many being the most frequently used. And so to set up a one-to-many relationship in Django, you use the foreign key field. And this basically is saying each dish can only relate back to one restaurant, but a restaurant can have multiple dishes. So maybe you went to the restaurant a few times and you ordered, fish and chips the first time, and then you had the steak the second time, so you could add in multiple dishes that you had. And this is something that's new to, I think, Django 2.0. You have to have this on delete. You have to let it know basically if something gets deleted, do you want to have it be protected, or do you want to have it also get deleted? Like if someone deleted a restaurant, do you want all the dishes that were connected to it to also disappear? I'm just going to set this to protect, just cause. Alright, so we need the name of the dish, and we need the price of the dish. We need our comments on the dish, and again we're going to do a slug field. So the name is just going to be a char field. Price is going to be a decimal field. And this one you also have to select max digits. I'm just going to do 10 because it's simple and easy. I know I'm never going to buy a 10-digit dish, and so I'll never exceed that. Decimal places is going to be 2. And the comment is going to be a text field. And that doesn't require any arguments. I mean, you could put some in here, but we're not going to. And then we're also going to do another slug field here. So there we are. We have defined our two tables. I didn't put this method of the string down here, and that was intentional. I'll show you in the admin when we get to that. I'm going to pop over here briefly. By default, Django is going to use SQLite. I'm just going to use SQLite for now. SQLite, as you can see. I'm going to just use it as I develop this. I think towards the end of the series I'll probably set up a real Postgres database and show you guys how to use that. But for now, this should be fine. And we're going to actually, you'll notice that there is no, SQLite is basically just a file that acts like a database. You'll notice that when we make the migrations, it will pop up over here. It's not here now because we haven't made the migrations. So we're going to actually do that. So there's 2 steps that you're going to have to do anytime you add a model, change a model. You're going to have to make migrations, and then you're going to have to migrate. And basically what make migrations is going to do is going to create a it's going to create a file in this migrations folder. It's going to basically build a Python file, and then when you actually migrate, it's going to use that file to actually hit and make the changes on the database itself. So we're going to use Python manage make migrations. Now here's where, if we didn't have this review in our installed apps, it would say nothing's changed because it wouldn't have known about these things here. So that's another thing you have to be mindful of. We have an error. Cannot import name state choices. I spelled it wrong. State. I spelled it right here, and it's red underline, so I should have. There we go. See, that's a good thing about the IDE. That red underline was not because it's a spelling error. Well, I mean, it was spelled wrong, but you can see it went away. I guess it is unresolved reference. No, it's used here. I don't know why it's complaining. Anyway, that's my little sidetrack, which probably didn't make any sense. But anyway, moving on. Let's make migrations. And again, you have to spell things correctly. Max link. It's TH, guys. How come no one told me? Of course, I copy and paste it, so it got screwed up throughout. All right, hopefully we get it right this time. No errors. Field defines a relation with model restaurant, which is either not defined or is abstract. Aha! I spelled restaurant wrong, guys. As you might have noticed, spelling is not my strong suit. Alright. I just copied and pasted, and everything should definitely be the same now. There we go. Now you'll notice over here in a second when it refreshes, we're going to have a new file in here. And you'll also notice DB SQLite popped up. So now we have this file here, which it generated. It's basically going to run through this file when we do migrate, and it's going to actually create the tables in the database. So let's do that now. Cool. Now we can actually run the server locally. You see that the address is 127.0.0.1, port 8000. And if you load it, it says, ta-da! The install works successfully. Congratulations. This is just your basic page which says, hey, you have Django installed, but you haven't done anything. So Django comes with an admin by default, which is an admin interface, which is useful. One thing we're going to have to do is create a user so we can log in, because we forgot to do that. So let's break this, and we're going to say create super user. And we're going to call it admin. Admin. Nope. That's the email address. Oh. Password is going to be super user created successfully. Let's run the server again. See, that's nothing like about having the terminal right here in the same window where I'm doing code and stuff is you'll notice that if I refresh this page, you can see all the GET requests and stuff as you're interacting. Or if you'd even see errors get thrown if we were, in a view and we had made a mistake in our code. Alright, now we're logged in the admin, and all we have is this authentication, groups, and users. Where's our models? Well, we have to add them to our admin pie. This is just something that Django creates because it has basically authentication built right into it, which is nice. You can actually piggyback off of it if you need authentication for your website. So this is the user we just created with that super user command, create super user. And you can, set permissions. Like you could have a user that could only add and change, but not be able to delete, stuff like that. So it's really nice. But let's go ahead and get these in our admin. Let's get these models in our admin. So we'll open up admin.py. So at the most basic level, all you have to do is, well, you have to, first of all, you're going to have to import your models. So from models, import restaurant and dish. And now we have to do admin site register. We want to register restaurant. I'm gonna have to do this again. Now we want to register dish. So we hit save, pop back over here, refresh. Look, there it is right there, and we could start adding. You can see that we have 0 records in our restaurant. Want to add a restaurant? Here are all our fields. So let's go ahead and add one real quick. I'm going to add one that I went to when I was on vacation. Let's look it up because I don't remember exactly where it was. I was on vacation in Cape Cod. Ember Restaurant, Cape Cod. Ember Pizza. This is it. It was pretty good. I enjoyed it. If you're on Cape Cod, and you want to check out this restaurant, I would recommend it. So this was here in Harwich Port, and the state is Massachusetts. And oh, did we not do phone? We didn't do phone. We forgot to do a phone number. That's alright, we can add it later. Probably in another video. And for the slug, I'm just gonna use Ember. And there you go. And I think I had the Hawaiian pizza, which was pretty good. Our menu, wings, pizza, Hawaiian. So $14. Let's go ahead and add a dish to that restaurant. So you can see that our first field is called restaurant, and we have a drop down, and the only choice we have right now is Ember, because that's the only restaurant that exists in the database at the moment. Of course, you've seen so far how I can spell, so I'm not even going to attempt to spell Hawaiian. Hawaiian pizza, and the price is $14. This was very good. You should get again. And for the slug, I'll probably go over another video on how to automate making the slug, but for now I'm just going to follow a convention in a kind of a manual way. I'm going to give it the name of the restaurant, and then I'm going to give it the name of the dish as the slug. And again, this has to be URL friendly, so I'm going to take out spaces and replace them with dashes, and I'm going to get rid of caps. Now you see here, it just says dish object 1. And if we went over here to restaurants, it actually says Ember. That is because we're returning the slug. And over here, we're not returning anything. But I'm actually going to do that. And I'm actually going to show you one more thing before I wrap up here. We can make the admin site a little more user-friendly. Instead of just having the slug here, we could add some more fields to make it a little more user-friendly. And to do that, we're going to create a class, and it's going to be called Restaurant Admin. I'm just going to use R because I don't want to spell it out. Admin model admin is what this is going to extend. And we're just gonna make a list display entry here, a variable. And we're basically just gonna make a tuple and list out what we want to actually see. So I'm gonna say name, I'm gonna say town, and state, how about? And then we just add this to our register here. So we're gonna register restaurant, the model, and we're also gonna register the admin right here. So if you pop over and refresh, now you see Ember, Town, Harwichport, State, Massachusetts. That's much nicer. And you can actually sort on these. Obviously, it's not going to do a hell of a lot right now because it's only one entry. So yeah, that pretty much is going to wrap up this video. In the next video, probably going to start breaking into the views. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and let me know in the comments. Thanks.